Good morning. I'm here having a chat with Sai Susarla. Sai Susarla is Dean of MIT School of Vedic Sciences and is also the founder of Vedavaapi Foundation. Indic Academy has been associated with Sai Susarla and MIT as well as Vedavaapi over the last 3 years. More specifically, for Vedavaapi, Indic Academy had the privilege to give a grant for the to start their activities. This was sometime about 1.5 years ago. And this chat is focused on getting a sense of what progress that Vedavaapi and Sai have made in this chosen space. So, good morning, Sai. You can start by telling us, define the problem and what is that problem that you're trying to solve through Vedavaapi.
Thank you for inviting. So the idea of Vedavaapi was to make it easy for the generation that is trained in modern education to start accessing India's knowledge traditions at large scale. Today, it's a small number of enthusiasts, and the barrier for them to get into the Indic knowledge studies, Bharatiya Shastra studies, is very high because of lack of training in some of the basic aspects of Gurukula education that is totally missing today. First being Sanskrit. And the second being the ability to retain information, retain content and mull over it, large amount of content and mull over it. That has been the hallmark of Indian tradition. So Indian tradition has been first to teach the language, then memorization of the content, and then analysis. And that used to be the train, and because of the very strong tradition of recitation, etc., at the young age, when the time comes to actually analyze things, they will all have everything in their head. Okay, so they can quickly refer to when the guru is or acharya is saying some concept, connecting it to what they have already read in some other book, something else. So it's a very highly interwoven set of concepts that are dealt with in Indian systems, and that requires that ability to refer and connect. And that entire system has been completely replaced for whatever reasons. And today, even the understanding the style of Indian scientific discourse is missing. In the ability to grasp that is also missing. That is one problem. That is one thing. And why should we even study Indic knowledge? Is what I have seen. I have been a Sanskrit enthusiast, starting with Sanskrit Bharati's approach of speaking in Sanskrit and thinking in Sanskrit natively, just as out of passion. And then the question arises as to what to do next. Naturally, I want to explore what Bharat has to offer, and that is when my encounter with I went around, basically interacting with scholars to record their 1 hour introduction to whatever the Shastra they are strong at. And as a result, I got exposed to the fact that the amount of rigor and depth and critical thinking that is in our system is phenomenal. And that is one. So even if there is no other value, just your honing your thought, honing your scientific thinking skills itself gets very, very strong by just studying Shastras, if nothing else. The next level utility that I have seen is that Shastras have a lot to offer in today. When we say science and technology, it's only about physics, chemistry, biology kind of stuff. But there is a lot of other Shastras which are to do with the human system, how what I call as subjective sciences. study of humans as individuals and groups, and what language is, and how thought gets expressed, how to organize information, how to organize knowledge. Okay, these are some of the areas where the world is actually going towards, and we have a lot to offer. Meaning, Bharatiya knowledge systems have a lot to offer, and so in that area, like definitely in computer science, there's a lot we can draw from Indic knowledge systems, and in psychology, in wellness, of course, we all know about
Let me
Ayurveda.
interrupt you here.
Yeah.
What do you mean that definitely in computer science there's a lot to learn from?
Yeah.
What?
So correct. See, computer science, in a
Because
typical.
we have this meme that Sanskrit is the best language for AI, and some of these memes we hear, and so therefore we don't know. I mean, I have no idea exactly how this is, whether it's true or whether because some papers are quoted, and so perhaps you can throw some light there.
Yes, yes. Um, See, basically, computer science is about um, representing knowledge and manipulating and inferences and in processing of knowledge. Okay, at a very high level, that's what it is. And so far, the evolution of computer science has been to process data. Data is just raw, information, bits and bytes, and then organizing it, storing it, retrieving it, and in a very large scale and efficient way. And the recent advances has been due to the power of the amount of processing power we have, and the resources we have at our disposal has dramatically increased, which enabled computer science to move towards from data processing to information processing to knowledge processing. That is the trend that is happening. And what we are talking about as a AI is nothing but knowledge processing, going towards that. We are not yet there, but and the whole database world, wherein all your airline reservations, bank stuff, that is all information processing. Okay. So a fundamental question in all these things is, how do I represent information in a way amenable to efficient large scale processing? Now that has been dealt with by databases and different things. When it comes to knowledge, it's wild west as of now. It's like it's just ad hoc models created out of what we you know what a person thinks, that you have a bunch of let's say, suppose you have a book. Okay, the book is written in plain English and you want to ask questions about that book. Okay, how do you represent? One is, of course, you do text search with that Google does, but that's not enough, right? You have to understand what is the concept being explained in that, and how do you represent the concept as a layer above the raw text that is in the book. That is what we call as knowledge representation, and there are models for it, etc. Now, Indian system has basically I am of course also a layman, but a little bit of informed layman, let's say. So there are two systems that we have: Nyaya and Mimamsa. Nyaya is basically logic, in the sense, what is inference, what is induction, deduction, what are the valid sources of knowledge, etc., which is very, very important for inferencing in AI also, in any computing system. The second part is um, how concepts relate to each other. Like, that means, how do you interpret text? What are when you read a text, there is a logical flow of thought that is happening in any book, from anybody's exposition. What Mimamsa did in the context of Vedic knowledge is to classify thoughts and how they connect with each other, which is precisely what we need for large scale knowledge processing. But it has not been applied till now. We are now looking at, for instance, how do you analyze social media conversations? Okay, And then in that process, meaning the modern AI basically looks for some specific patterns. If a very angry related words are used, you classify it as a this kind of a mood, you know. So it's a what I call as an ad hoc and slowly evolving learning process. Whereas in the Mimamsa system, they have fundamentally looked at thought from its core, from the core principle of what exactly thought is all about, what are the types of thought that get expressed, and then how thoughts get related. For instance, when I express something and I want to elaborate on it, there are two. I can give an example, okay, or I can give how that concept, I can explain that concept in terms of sub concepts. So there are two different ways of connecting sentences, for instance, sentences or whatever thoughts. So that organizing and interpreting thought is what Mimamsa does. Okay. So the beauty is logic on the one hand and the ability to interpret text or discourse on the other hand. Together, if you can use these models as base models for representing books and then using them for querying, answering questions, and use all your latest AI, you know, that opens up a lot of applications, very exciting applications. That's an example.
Just as a small aside, I met with Ray Kurzweil of Singularity University, and then this was Google has launched Talk to Books, which is basically a query and an answer. So wherever through machine learning they will search 100,000 books, wherever this question and this kind of an answer has come, so you will get. So it's a more contextual search, as opposed to a general string-based search on a regular Google. You can go to Talk to Books and then search, ask questions, and it'll tell you all the books which have this question and this kind of an answer.
Right.
So I asked him when he finished his talk, and I just, do you think Sanskrit would be beneficial? He just looked at me, sort of blankly. But from what you are saying, that Google should actually look at Mimamsa and then refine this talks to book and contextual searching, right?
It enables very meaningful search, meaningful results, because you're directly representing what is happening in human brain. That's there. Instead of guessing and slowly converging towards what human brain is doing.
So coming back to your project specifically, how does this apply or is useful to what you're doing?
So,
or how are you applying this?
So, so I have mentioned that there is value in exploring Indian knowledge for contemporary relevance, and there is a lot to explore. And today's younger generation is not trained to read that and then assimilate it and process it properly, right? So on the other hand, there's another big problem, which is all of our traditional knowledge is embedded in either in oral traditions, it is going from guru to sishya and all that, or in written manuscripts, which are today, like most of the numbers are keep varying depending on who you talk to. I started with 5 million because that's what I got from National Manuscript Mission. Now they're saying 30 million. Okay. 30 million books compared to 1 million of the entire world put together before the advent of print era. That means huge amount of 30 times more knowledge was actually documented in India across compared to the rest of the world, and none of it is today in a way that is processable, that is readable. Why? Because the scripts are old, scripts are outdated scripts. It's all dilapidated. Even though later computing technology has grown very phenomenally in image processing and all that, none of that is getting applied to solve this problem of actually looking at what is there in our system, what our ancestors have written and talked about. Okay, so Vedavaapi's vision is to transform from Talapatra to searchable knowledge base. How do you transform? Give in these 20 million books. Tell me where, let's say, an issue about some particular health condition in the Himalayas is talked about. Suppose I want to ask that question. We are like nowhere near that. Okay, so it requires building a pipeline. Basically, you have to transform this raw, either oral or written or this kind of into text to meaning, meaning to actually models of what is the concept being presented, and then to applications. So that is the pipeline, overall pipeline. And there's a lot of tools that need to be developed in this process, and either developed or leveraged. See that today the problem is there is a lot of people working on computational linguistics, Sanskrit processing and all that, but that is mostly at in the beginning part of the pipeline. There is a lot more to be done at knowledge processing level, like I was talking about. So what Vedavaapi is trying to build is a common, almost like a huge workflow, leveraging wherever tools are available and plugging them together in a way that is interoperable, so that you can build a pipeline and use it at large scale. That is the core idea of Vedavaapi.
So where are you now? You were mentioning that you are launching a portal called Ebar. How does that fit into this vision?
Yeah, so basically you need two things. You need the content and you need the processing engine. Vedavaapi is initially focusing on the technology, processing engine, and by putting together the pieces in a usable way. And naturally, once it is put together, we need the content to process it. Today, that content is not available in a always on, always available format for everybody to use and rely on and build on. Okay, that is the issue. So even though there are
archive.org is there.
Yeah. So archive.org exists. For instance, there are so many like Sanskrit documents.org, archive.org, and DLI, Digital Library of India. So there are so many kind of repositories that are available, and they're being being populated and grown. And there is a lot of content being already scanned and digitized today through eGangotri and other projects. But due to some policy issues or something like that, what is happening is that when you archive.org provides a raw free service for people to upload, but it also enables people to remove whenever they want. Okay, and since it is private collection, you are free to do whatever you want with it. So you cannot rely on, suppose you see a book there and you want to build on it, you do all your analysis and everything, the base is taken away from you. And that happened a lot with hundreds of books for whatever reason, we don't know. Okay, so that is one problem. Second is the amount of content that is available on archive.org is really mostly printed content over the last, let's say 19th century, 20th century. That's where the printing started. But there's a lot of content in Indian system which is in the handwritten manuscripts. That is today mostly available with individual Oriental libraries, are digitized and kept in National Manuscript Mission, but again, not accessible to the public as of now. But that is a policy issue. But first we want to demonstrate that if you had a stable, accessible archive, okay, and you have the technology to process it and demonstrate the value of putting them together, then probably policy can be modified to be able to leverage and make it democratize the access. So with that intent, we have created, we are floating this thing called eBharati. eBharati is we want it to be an always on, reliable, dependable Indic text archive to start with. Initially it's only text, but later we want to add recordings, etc. also, because they're all just media of wherever knowledge is being produced. So we want to eventually like take recordings of scholars talking and then use that for further analysis and things like that also.
But it's some
So
element of reinventing the wheel is happening here.
yes, there is meaning we are, for instance, um, there is some pockets of content everywhere. We are organizing our service such that we can actually provide value add, let's say, searchability and republishability services to existing content wherever that is, and also provide our own storage space for people to upload their content, both, so that we don't want to just keep copying the same stuff again and again. That's a waste of resources. But whatever is available, we want to have at least one copy which is there for posterity to build on. That's all.
So you were talking about some kind of a processing ability, and which Vedavaapi is developing, and it's in the alpha mode right now. Is that so? Can you just talk about that a bit? What is the processing that actually goes through? I mean,
right. Yes. So the first step, as I mentioned, our vision is to transformation of Indic knowledge from Talapatras and to searchable knowledge bases. So the first step is to convert these scanned books today, which are available all over the place, but where there is no search. You cannot search in books. And OCR, optical character recognition technology, has grown in leaps and bounds, and it is being used heavily for English and English-oriented languages. Google is a leader there. But for Indian language scripts, it is for printed books, it is reasonably okay, but not for nowhere for handwritten work. Okay. So the second issue with these existing technologies is that the problem of proofreading. If you have somebody types it up, or some tool converts it into text, how to make sure that it is faithful to the original? Okay, so that is called proofreading job. Today what happens is, if the proofreading job, even if the processing tool is very good, more than 90%, the proofreading of the 10% is more tedious than than just typing it up.
that's
And
the weakest link.
yeah, because of a lot of manual stuff involved. The reason why that is so tedious is because the tool cannot learn from what the user corrected. So there is no feedback loop into the OCR engines based on what the humans have corrected the output into, right?
So there's no possibility of machine learning linked OCR.
It is possible. The technology is there. It is just that the engineering has not been done. The actors have not been connected and integrated. That's the thing. So Google does it. Google has its own internal engines which learn over a period of time. But today there is no way for outside world to kind of supply the corrections back to Google and let it improve. That loop is not there, not established. So it's not a technology problem, but it is an organization, meaning what you call integration problem. Okay, that is one problem. Second thing is, see, we cannot wait for Google to solve. Let's say there is some archaic script which nobody looks at except scholars. There is no commercial sense for Google to invest in that kind of stuff. But from a heritage standpoint, it's very important to do these kinds of things. So what we are working on is
most of this work that Google does is not in the commercial domain. They just invest in it, and they sort of it's more long-term investments. Would they be not interested in looking at all the Indian scripts? And
they would be interested in Indian scripts. Say, for instance, this OCR for handwritten and ancient scripts has come up apparently in Google, and they have done some work. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not an insider, but I was told by people there that it was shelved for lack of the clear connection with access or the user base or something like that. Okay, and that is one issue. The second thing is, even more for handwritten, because the number of users are only experts, right? So if it is for printed Indian language, I'm sure Google will be very much interested, because that's like very useful in the today's even for non-traditional knowledge related applications. But for shastras and these kinds of stuff, it is so I don't want to kind of say that, Google cannot do it or anything like that. Google will not do it, and not like that. We want to ride the wave of whoever provides the latest tools and then build on top of that. Whatever, augment them with what they're lacking today so that we can get the job done. Okay. And the method we are adopting is basically crowdsourcing or expert sourcing is what I call it, on top of OCR, so that we are employing a lot of tools, a lot of people across the world. We want to, by providing them an online platform where they can actually go and collect, correct the whatever books in a large scale way. And then we have tools we are building tools, AI tools. IIIT Hyderabad is running a project along with Vedavaapi to leverage these corrections back to feedback, and then make the whole process much faster. So the typical idea is that, let's say, suppose you have a handwritten book. We want to type the first 10 pages of the book and then feed it into the system, and it'll auto detect the rest of the 190 pages, let's say. And then user goes, corrects a few next to 10 pages, and it will correct. And then the asymptotically, the number of errors will go down, so that the TDM of repeated corrections will dramatically reduce. So that is the manner we want to do it. And we call it human assisted OCR, basically. So that is the first.
Done anything so far?
So we now have the engine to invoke Google or any existing OCR engine, and let users correct them completely, and make the data available for training by tools through API programmatically. Okay. So, and how to use that tool, there is already a prototype being developed for how to leverage those corrections to improve OCR. That is in testing right now. So the entire pipeline is ready. The algorithms need to be refined over time. That's what we're doing. Right? But from an end user perspective, the whole workflow is in place.
So when are you likely to finish this?
We are planning to get this human assisted OCR, the entire loop, in operation in about 6 months time from now. Previously, we did not have some clarity on that part of it, that machine learning part of it. Now it is, we have good experts running in the, operating in that area now, and students available and things like that.
So if this part is done, then is effectively all the manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts, can be scanned and rectified, the mistakes rectified, and ready for processing.
Ready for processing, printing, republishing, searching. You can search for any content and then you can look for it. That's a big advantage. And then republishing later. That is the next level. And then the another part that we are also parallelly working on is transforming flat text into concept maps.
What does that mean?
Principles. What is a concept map? It is a mind map of how the thought flow is in the book, directly represented as a network of concepts, like how the book starts, what is the concept it introduces, how it elaborates. Okay, what are the new technical terms that are available in this book? Okay, and give me examples of those concepts. And you can say, give me a 5-page summary of the 200-page book. You can automatically generate that once you have this kind of a map. Okay, so that mechanism.
Is this kind of mapping done for other books? I mean, other academic books? What is this concept? I mean, concept of concept mapping, is it prevalent elsewhere, or is it peculiar to
the notion of this notion of mind maps? Okay, mind map is, suppose you're doing a meeting or you're reading a book. you can manually note down, what are how it is flowing, and then make the
Sure.
connections manually, right? So it's like you are digesting some information from a book, and then you are presenting your own interpretation of that book in your own way, in a mind map. Okay. Now, what a concept map or Shastra map, what I call it, is instead of you digesting it and presenting it in a different wording, you just take the original things only and connect them up, so that you are not bringing your interpretation into the loop. Okay, so that there is fidelity to the original thought, and the method of connecting these things is also based on the Mimamsa principles. What we call there's a notion of called Tantra Yukti, which is a technical term for how uh, joining of concepts, like I mentioned, how thoughts connect, and that network of thoughts, right? So India has developed its own mechanism of how a discourse unfolds, and that method is used across all shastras.
I see. Is there any person, any author or any academic who has done work in this specific area?
Yes. One of the pioneering work on the notion of Tantra Yuktis as a method of text discourse has been by, I think, Kane or something. P.B. Kane, I think, is the name. And recently, Professor Jayaraman Mahadevan from Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, this has been his PhD topic, actually.
I see.
Yeah, so we have recently conducted a 2-day workshop tutorial to familiarize modern PhD scholars about this method of thesis writing, Tantra Yukti as a method of thesis writing. We have done a very good workshop, and very well attended one, and it's now available as an online course also through Indic Academy.
No, but there's not much written by the Indologists on this.
I don't think so. I'm not an expert in Indology studies world, but this is a very deep, very highly Sanskrit-based work. Nothing to do with historical analysis and all that stuff. I don't know. So maybe it may not have attracted them yet. It's a very highly scientific work.
So once you do, so you are trying to create a database of books and manuscripts, and then you have this engine to recognize OCR plus machine learning engine that will rectify it and then scan it and be available for further processing. And that further processing
plain text.
Yeah, converting to plain text, and then you can republish and
right. That is one output. The next level stage is language analysis, understanding the sentences, words, connecting them to the dictionaries, and so that people can make sense of that, the text. Okay. And that is the grammatical analysis part of it. That is typically the realm of computational linguistics. So, which you might have heard a lot, Sanskrit computational linguistics. That has been a very big.
So what is of value there? I mean, just in terms of for whom is it of value?
Unless you do grammatical analysis of the text, you cannot actually derive meaning out of it. Like, for instance, who is talking to whom? What is the question being asked? Okay. So when you're reading a sentence, language understanding, it comes under the realm of natural language understanding. It's a big area which is very well developed in the West.
But any scholar who reads that, won't he be able to understand? I mean, that's...
Yeah. So the thing is, for scholars to read, all you need is this, the printed books, that's printed or whatever, republished books. But as I mentioned, our target is the younger generation. Okay. Suppose a person who is just a novice in Sanskrit but doesn't have a solid vocabulary or deep grammatical knowledge, for them, if you want to make them, empower them to start reading these books, we need some almost like an intelligent e-reader for Sanskrit text, which will help them, like, by providing them at any point, okay, what does this word mean? what is the grammatical concept used. So how do I, so basically it's almost like a crutches for people who are not thoroughly familiar with this thing. This is not meant for the e-reader kind of work, is not meant for deep scholars. They will actually, it's a hindrance for them, right? Our target is the younger generation. More and more of mainstream educated younger generation should start exploring this knowledge.
And after this module, then what's the next one?
The next one is what we call as the concept map, as I mentioned to you. And we are working on, as a first step, we are working on taking many of the standard textbooks, prescribed books, and transforming into these concept maps and with an e-reader kind of facility to help today's MA students and others to grasp that and then master the books much faster. Okay, so that is our what you call initial beachhead application we are trying to create, and we have done one for 5, 6 books already, which are prescribed books in typical BA Sanskrit, MA Sanskrit kind of situations.
So you're in a way making a like very crude example. You're making like when I was growing up and I was doing my degree, we used to have what is known as a guide.
Correct.
We have a textbook and we have a guide.
Yes.
So you're making a guide for the current crop and making your life easier.
Yeah.
And you're hoping that, but isn't that in a way going against the grain of how these things are to be taught in terms of how there's a particular time and there's a particular transformation that has to come because of this learning. But if you do this kind of shortcuts, are you turning out people?
So the choice right now in front of us is, do we want the youngsters to abandon it because it's like they hit a wall, or do you want to build some small sopanas, steps, so that if they climb a couple of steps and then get excited and then go to the experts and do the right way? That is the question. The choice now is have 0 people read it, or at least a few people start exploring it and make it easy for them. We are building these steps to the
Shastras, dummies for Shastras kind of thing.
Yeah, Shastras for dummies.
Shastras for dummies.
Yeah. Not dummies, actually. These are very intelligent people. We don't want to call it dummies.
No. I'm just saying that's the...
Shastras for novices to Indian knowledge. Yes.
So then what are the other applications from this work? You were talking about innovation and possibility of innovation and whatever knowledge that's hidden in these scriptures, they can be used. And so where does that fit in?
So, okay, I have this pet statement called knowledge has to transform into power, into some use, some actual deployment in some to solve a problem, right? The most important reason why Indic knowledge should be studied is to actually solve some problems in the field, right? Now, the way, in order to actually address a problem, you have to look at that problem in a different light. You have to use a different lens to solve that problem. Okay. What Indian Shastras provide is an alternative way, alternative model is what I call it. Alternative representation or model of looking at reality, so that that alternative way of looking at it itself will open up this how to address it, kind of thing. Like for instance, psychology, wellness. Okay, Ayurveda, for instance, has a model of how the human system works. It has its own parameters for understanding what a human's personality profile is, and then how the environment is. How do you describe or express what Shita Kalam, meaning winter? What is the health-oriented representation of the essence of winter, essence of summer, okay, or and then what a human being is, like what is his prakriti.
Correct.
Now, unless you represent the human prakriti in certain model, certain representation, which is amenable to processing, and the system context in which, like for instance, you are eating sambar. What is sambar in terms of health profile? Okay, or a prakriti profile. Is your profile and the sambar profile compatible or not? Okay. In order to do such analysis, you need to have a model. Okay. So Shastras must be transformed into parametric models. So such that you can actually use those models for getting them to be used in the mainstream science. That piece is missing today. We are studying today Shastras just to preserve and for pass on to the next generation. A person who studies Mimamsa, his purpose in life is to take Mimamsa and then teach 10 people Mimamsa. Not to actually apply it in a contemporary scenario. So once we build all these concept maps and everything, that will be the point at which now modern mainstream educated people and the traditional scholars will come together and see how it can be converted into scientific models for application. So we can only take it to that point, that model building is a very intellectual and scientific activity. That is where we want to go, take the world to. And I have listed, we have almost a dozen models that we can create, like governance models, jurisprudence models, economic models. What is a state? What is it? What is the difference between a state and an organization? We have our own definitions of those. What are the key characteristics? How do you represent, for instance, you can take each corporate role. Let's say, what is a CFO? What is his role in a organizational perspective? You can express those roles as a vector of parameters based on Arthashastric and Dharmashastric models, and then say, is this person compatible with this role? Okay, you can answer such questions using these models.
So, just in terms of the what your next 1 year's goals are and what you're hoping to achieve, can you just give us some sense from this Ebar and Ebar is just launching, right? You
just launching, yeah, just launching. So the eBharati is meant to be the repository of always on online available text content from it's like a place, and then we want to reach out to collectors of Indic knowledge books and things like that, to be able to host it on our platform or wherever they host it, to provide us access. That's all. So that we can make those contents searchable and republishable. That is the first deliverable that we are targeting, and we want to target about minimum 100,000 books to be available on our platform natively, in addition to, of course, addressing the archive.orgs of the world, and provide searchability to these all of these books. That is one. Second, take at least 1,000 books.
But that's the most crucial part, right? Providing searchability to 100,000 books.
Yes.
Is basically meaning that OCR plus the human aspect. Mm-hmm. That issue has to be addressed.
But
because the books scanning and that's anyway a lot of people. That's
correct.
Not a,
yeah.
So 100 books. I'm sure
after scanning. Yes. We coming to picture after scanning, but see, the searchability is different from republishability. There is a small step between the two. Searchability means even if OCR does a bad job, okay, like let's say OCR does 70%, okay, you are searching for a word, at least you'll get somewhere near that place. So you don't need full human correction to be able to achieve searchability. But if you want to republish a book, you have to do the human correction properly. Right. So, searchability actually we can do for printed books today with what Google does and applying it to large scale. That entire workflow we have ready. Okay. And we have the other crowdsourcing way of human correction in place. But that's why that is a manual job. I mean, a lot of manual labor involved. And that's why we are targeting about 1,000 books to be properly republishable, to get them to republishable state. Pick some, hand pick some sets of what we call as important but not yet published kind of books and make it that way. So that is thing. And
are there any specific themes that you're selecting within these 1,000 books? You feel there's any categorization of hierarchy or importance?
Yes. So we are focusing one big gap in today's Ayurvedic system is lack of searchable access to Ayurvedic nighantus. That means herbal databases. Apparently, there are like 18 herbal database books which are available in text format, but not in a way that you can actually do a search on like what is this herb related to, what are its properties. That kind of connection is not there today. So we want to transform those into all the whatever available herbal databases into searchable herbal books into databases. That is one thing we want to do. Second, we want to take Nadi Pariksha Granthas, at least 5 or 6 of them, because Nadi Pariksha Granthas are almost like a doctor's journal of all the treatments he has done and what he has seen, what he has administered, how it modified. It's like a gold mine of mining, okay, for wellness interventions. So none of them has been touched. Very few have been actually touched by today's Ayurvedic fraternity. So we want to make those available in text form, make them publishable. That is, maybe that will be like a dozen or so to start with. So Ayurveda is one domain. The second is in the area of Paurohitya, there are some very commonly referred books which are very helpful for making some decisions about, whether I should do this puja and what are the conditions, what should I do, and what should I pay attention to, should I do this in this time or that time. So many kind of things that happen. Today, they are all being done manually through some, physical books. We want to transform at least 5 books which we've identified, which are highly frequently referred by Purohits, into online form, searchable online form. It will be very valuable. So that is one Purohit.
And that will be converted into an app which he can carry, and then he can.
Correct. It's just on the fly. Yes. On smartphone. Yes. So that is that. Okay. We are going to digitize 2 books called Nirnaya Sindhu and Dharma Sindhu, most frequently referred books by most Purohits across India, apparently. Okay. So that is one. And there are other a little bit of. I want to consult scholars to see what Dharma Shastra books need to be transformed. We need to work with them to identify those. Maybe 5 or 6 books in that area is what.
So before we conclude, just wanted to get a sense of that. How did you come and see that there's a gap here and there is a problem here, and why did you think of wanting to solve this problem from your personal background? How did this happen?
How it started was, I am a regular run-of-the-mill software engineer, and with some enthusiasm for Sanskrit. And I was helping my wife do her MA in Sanskrit, and in the way it runs in India, typically there is absolutely no support in terms of studying and things like that, especially in the Sanskrit language stuff. So I was trying to help her. Like within a week, there is an exam, and she has like about 200 pages of book to read. It was very difficult. So I sat and actually helped her by creating notes for her, Cliff's notes, the guide thing, right? So I used the mind map mechanism for that. And 2 things happened. One, I realized the depth of Indian thought. That I read this book called Dhvanya Loka by Anandavardhana. It's almost like a PhD thesis. I understood the depth and rigor of Indic thought directly. Second, I realized that a different way of presenting it would really help people. And I transformed that entire almost 100-page book into 5 pictures, conceptual pictures.
Okay.
Dramatically helped my wife, in her, because she was like clueless. How can I handle this? That was the situation. That was the start. Okay. And that's what triggered my interest in these things. And then I was searching, and then said, when I searched for these kind of books, they were not available. And then I came to know that, these are all, this is the most neglected. World is all moving. We are all solving world's problems. We're not solving our own problems. So that's what made me transition, actually. Why cannot I apply my knowledge to this?
Yeah. So before we conclude, just in terms of what the government has to do, you have to run, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
It's already 11.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So thank you very much. That's been very useful to understand, and all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.